Transportation and Development's expropriation authority. And these rules and regulations that were adopted in September of 2011 amplify those aspects and track the language that is in the state law for the Department of Transportation and Development. ARBC does have quick take authority. There was some limitation in that quick take authority that was related to the issue of the Amite Diversion Canal, and that was legislation not found in our statutes, but were found in and adopted by Senator White as it relates to, it was actually placed in language in the CPRA legislation, but prohibited ARBC from using any type of quick take in order for it to satisfy the obligations of mitigation. That issue has been resolved because of the fact that the Corps of Engineers has acquired all of the mitigation credits necessary through mitigation banks, and there is no takings necessary for mitigation. That was the only limitation of our authority, and that was solely related to the Amite Diversion Canal. So I generated this letter to the commission members that go over that legislative authority, as well as a copy of the rules and regulations that were adopted back in 2011. These were done in anticipation of the need for potential expropriation, but because the Department of Transportation and Development took over the aspects of the Amite Diversion Canal, it was not necessary for us to proceed with any expropriations. So that's kind of an overview of what the authority is for the board. I'm glad to answer any questions anybody may have.
Any questions? Commissioner Kluwat.
Yes, just real quick, Mr. Bankston. So is there any legislation needs to be moved to be able to have the board with full expropriation?
No, because I don't think so. The limitation that was placed in the legislation some time ago was only as it relates to the Amite. That issue's been resolved, so there's no mitigation, and that was our only limitation. So we have the same authority as DOTD has for expropriation, which is very broad, including quick take.
Appreciate that clarification, because I know that had been a question for a while.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions? Myself, I mean, are we looking to expropriate anything?
I had a request for a report on the authority, so.
Commissioner Quintmore?
Yeah, I mean, when we look at projects like Bayou Manchac or things like that, yeah, absolutely, expropriation needs to be on the table. Obviously, we want to work with our residents through negotiation process first, obviously, which is part of the requirement for what I like to call quick pay, not quick take, because we actually pay the person quicker than the actual old process. So I'm going to eventually change that in state law. I'm working on it. But yes, we're going to need that for various projects in the future, and that's something that we needed to know our exact authority when dealing with those expropriations or the acquiring of drainage servitudes or fee simple title property.
I really appreciate that explanation. Thank you for that.
Real quick, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Is it our understanding that currently President Quintmore can explain the parishes don't currently have on the parish level that type of authority?
Press your button. Say it again.
We do. I mean, East Baton Rouge Parish does, from my perspective. Yeah. And I'd just like to also make it clear, like President Clipmon indicated, at no point do we ever want to go and just take somebody's property. That is not the intent. I've done this many years over for EBR. Our goal would be trying to find a happy solution to the compensation that's necessary and to get this work without having to go through expropriation. Of course, you got to have it because there are some that no matter what the answer, or it could be multiple people owning the property and you can't find them and know where they're at, that it requires you to go and take those steps. Just wanted a clarification from the East Baton Rouge Parish.
That's an important issue, is people that own property that is in a succession or it's never been in a succession. That causes the inability, and we had 3 pieces of property along the Comite Diversion Canal that were all involving people living in California, living in other places, and trying to get that succession done and acquired for this was delayed. So that is the kind of incident in which you really need, and the money's placed in the registry of the court, and then it allows people to come make their claims for that particular money. So it is important, and we saw that in the Comite Diversion Canal project.
So what you're saying is you could have a willing landowner that wants to sell out, but they may be an heir, and if there hasn't been a proper succession and judgment of possession, then you really can't do business regardless, right?
Correct. I mean, they found this to be a problem also after Katrina, where people wanted to participate in the Road Home program, and they had people they had a cousin that owned a 5% interest in the succession, and he was living in California and didn't know where he was. So there was just very much, probably 30% of all the people wanting to participate in the Road Home program couldn't, because of the fact that there was no way to get clear title on the property. But through an expropriation, you can do that.
Okay. All right, next item. You got a report on our status of the waste tires?
Actually, I got a picture this morning from DEQ's enforcement. They have the tires have been removed with the help of East Baton Rouge Parish. They've been removed at no additional cost to the commission. They have also placed cameras out there because, as you know, once someone starts dumping, and it potentially continues. So we've had help from, and want to thank the Wildlife and Fisheries as well as DEQ enforcement, who have gotten this issue resolved. But that's all been removed, and I received photographs this morning from DEQ enforcement that they have been removed from the property. There's also a question as to whether or not it was actually on ARBC property, because it was really close to the road, and probably it was on servitude or right-of-way property, but it's all been resolved.
Well, that's good. Everybody knows what we're talking about out there, that where the Comite River Diversion Canal is being constructed. You know, these construction sites is a convenient location for some people to just dispose of trash, and this went without exception. And it sounds like they're kind of clever. They know where the line is, and they kind of put it on one or the other, where, you know, you don't know whose it is or not, or who's responsible. But I'm glad that something's being done about that. We would hate that becomes another problem that we got to deal with. Okay, any questions on the reports by Mr. Bankston? Okay. Moving on our agenda, number 9 under old business, and we have a status of the Upper Comite River project by East Feliciana, Mr. Ed Parker. Mr. Parker?
Yes, sir. At this time, I'd like to remove this for discussion. pending the outcome of a meeting that is scheduled for the 26th, which I should have more information on this meeting at that time. So would report back to the full commission and the public on the December 9th meeting.
Thank you. Just so everyone knows, this particular project was submitted by East Feliciana Parish under the Louisiana Watershed Initiative. It consists of two different parts. It's essentially clearing and snagging. That's a common phrase, but it's to remove the excess debris from the channel that's accumulated in that part of the upper Comite River for years and years and years. It's to the point where you got hills and highlands. That's what we call our hills up there. That's flooding. And it's because the drain's getting clogged up. And this project is to do something simple about it and to remove that and put it back to its natural drainage. Simply, its natural drainage. So hopefully we'll hear something back one way or another from East Feliciana Parish. Any comments on that? Okay. All right, moving on our agenda, our next item is ARBC contractor, the Water Institute's report by Mr. Garvin Pittman. The Water Institute, under Mr. Garvin Pittman, handles our management of our ARBC master plan that's being written, and also our Louisiana Watershed Initiative Region 9 coordinator activities. Mr. Pittman?
Sure thing. I hope you all have a copy of the presentation. Is it working? Can y'all hear me? Let me get a little closer. Okay, hopefully y'all have a copy of the presentation. Since we didn't have it up and on screen, if you want to stop me and slow me down or ask me any questions, please feel free to do so at any time. The first slide you've seen before, it's keeping on schedule. Just here to let you know what dates we held meetings with the Master Plan Committee and when the next meeting is. So we held meetings on October 11th, October 25th, and November 8th. And the next meeting is November 22nd. And all of those meetings are going well. We could use a little bit more representation from the board, but we're managing with what we have. Progress. The first two Dewberry team invoices have been reimbursed by CPRA. Thank you very much to CPRA. The next two invoices actually will go in today. Hopefully those will be no problem. Also attended a public meeting in Clinton on October 9th. There was some representation by members of the community there, but not in a whole lot. And the next master plan project workshop will be on November 14th. That's this Thursday. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend. I will send Brett McMahon from the Water Institute to take my place. I can slow down there if anybody's got any questions on that. Okay, on to LWI. There was a funding workshop. There was basically an all-day funding workshop that was held on October 9th. It was to discuss the Louisiana Watershed Initiative Watershed Management Plan activities for this quarter. As most of you are aware, the legislatively mandated master plan will take precedence over the schedule of the master plan will take precedence over the schedule of the watershed Louisiana Watershed Initiative Watershed Management Plan. However, they will both be compliant. The master plan will be compliant with the Watershed Initiative. And we have had separate meetings with the folks at LWI to make sure that's happening. Also on October 16th, there was a National Flood Insurance Program / CRS Regional Watershed Plan meeting. Whatever meetings that they do produce slides for and presentations, I have downloaded the slides and have them available for your, if you want them. Other meetings, on October 24th, there was a FEMA Community of Practice webinar that I attended, which talks about how FEMA communicates with different regions. And I know one of those meetings should be coming up in Iberville Parish here next year. And then November 7th was a meeting with the Capital Region Planning Commission. It was kind of an impromptu meeting that they asked to have for me. I was not able to help them with what they wanted. If you need more details on that, let me know. But basically, they wanted the Amite River Basin to be able to trade development with East Baton Rouge Parish, sort of a combination of ways to help with flood control in rural areas and help with blight inside the parish. But there was nothing I could do to help them. I told them they'd have to talk to the individual parishes. Upcoming Louisiana Watershed Initiatives on the 13th, there'll be another funding workshop. I should be able to attend that. On the 19th is another monthly watershed coordinator call. I should be able to attend that as well. And then I have here on the slide is TBD. It's a project discovery workshop, which I'll get to in a minute, what that's going to look like. On slide, I don't know what number this is. You see it's the Louisiana Watershed Initiative Project Inventory System. Since the last meeting, they rolled out a dashboard, so to speak, on their website that has the all the projects that each watershed has in the hopper. It is not for public use at the moment. It is solely for the use of the watershed, the people within the authority of the watershed and Louisiana Watershed Initiative to track these projects. It is typically up to the watershed coordinator to populate this, but other people can be given permission upon request. It's been my if you can see here that there are some projects populated there that just that's just projects that they had aware of and they put them in there. It's my recommendation that we wait until the projects have been selected by the master plan to go in here, and then we can go in and put them in. That way we don't have conflicting information in different sources. So if y'all are okay with that, that's the way we'll handle it. I've gotten permission from the folks at Arcadis to do so, so I'll take your guidance on that however you wish. Okay. The Project Discovery Workshop. Recall a few months back I gave you some information that was still in the early stages about a program that the LWI has through their contractor to help get a project ready for grant application. Now, these should be projects that do not have a dedicated funding source yet. They can be anywhere from a project concept to something that's going through your engineering and design. But most importantly is something that doesn't really have some sort of a targeted funding source yet. So what they want to do, or what they're offering to do, is use some of their own expertise to help develop the project, which at this point I don't think we need because Dewberry is on the team developing that project as we speak. But then they also want to use their expertise in grant management to help develop a grant strategy, how to scale it, what kind of grants might go well for it, what information you might need, all the other information you need outside of typical engineering and design and project concept that goes into a grant application. So the the project that has been selected, now it's not too late to change it if you want to, but the project that's been selected is the Upper Amite Retention Project, or what the Dewberry team calls, I believe, is the Upper Highway 432. Highway 432. That is I guess a kinder, gentler version of the Darlington project to store water up in places that would be a lot more politically palatable than the Darlington project. The Dewberry team and the model that they have done for the Louisiana Watershed Initiative outside of the Amite River Basin Master Plan work show that is probably the most beneficial project that you can do within the basin to cause meaningful change in the lower part of the basin. So that's the project that's been selected by their team, and if you want to change that, please let me know, because we owe them information now about that project so they can get started on it. If that wasn't clear, please ask questions. Okay. Also, I've been asked to develop a group calendar for deadline tracking. At the moment, I think just me this would be for grants. you have a number of grants, a number of activities that have sub-activities that need to happen or milestones that need to happen along the way. I've been asked to put together a calendar for that. I can do that in something as simple as Excel and email you a PDF of it. But just full disclosure, grant applications is not my forte. I do not have a lot of background information on knowing what grants are around and when they happen. So I may need help from some folks on the committee. I know at least one of the commissioners is a grant expert. I could probably use his help as well. If you wanted something more interactive than just a PDF of a spreadsheet, we do have a program at the Water Institute that we use called Asana. It has a free version that you could use. It would send you email updates and action items that would be on your plate or anybody else's plate. But at least at the moment, I think in talking to President Clark, you want something as simple as a PDF from a spreadsheet, which I can do as well. So however you want to make that happen, happy to do so. I'm probably going to need help with what those actual grant deadlines are.
President Quintmore.
Yeah, the purpose is just so that we can start the process on any grants that we would like to, go after. We all are, a lot of us here have day jobs, plus we're on different commissions, and also, we have other duties at the parishes. So that, let's just say BRIC, which was due in October, right? So maybe we need to determine, okay, we need a 3-month alert on that particular grant. So if we're interested in submitting something, that we get that 3 months prior, and then Tony can simply send out the email, hey, we got an alert, this is going to be due, because it's on the calendar, and she has access to that, so she just reminds us that this grant is coming up, and the deadline is 3 months away, or whatever the time frame is. And that just allows us to ensure, okay, if we're going to submit for this, what's the match? And so a lot of us here at the parishes, certainly, we have that in our drainage programs to where we have that already. So we can supply that information to you. It doesn't need to be complicated. Don't need you to be a grant expert. Just need you to say, hey, this is coming up, and then we as a commission decide if we want to submit. Do we have the matching funds? Is it 25-75? Is it 90-10? Is it 100%? Whatever the circumstances, so that we can make those decisions without having to say, in the month that the deadline is, oh God, how do we get this in real quick? And that's just to give us a heads up. That's the goal of it, and it doesn't have to be complicated. That's all.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'll be reaching out for a list of what those might be and when they might be coming out.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, just a spreadsheet,
Okay.
1, 2, 3, name of grants, dates,
Okay.
match, stuff like that for the column titles.
Okay, and I'll keep it on our team site, which looks like a SharePoint site to you, so you have access to it through Miss Tony, and anybody who wants access to it, I can give it to you, no
Right.
problem. But I'll be sending out the PDF on a regular basis.
And get us something to start with, and,
Okay.
we can work together to populate that, and that'll, be a tool in our toolbox that we use. Commissioner Knight?
We may be able to just set up a grants.gov account and set up the alert notices in there for all the NOFOs that come out in certain categories that might, it's going to deliver a lot of stuff that's not going to be appropriate, but at least that's a start. That's going to deliver a lot of information to us of the stuff that's not typical, the ones that aren't reoccurring every year.
Am I allowed to set up one in just my name so that I can then filter through all of that and then give you the information that's more important, more relevant to you?
That's
Whoever the
an
board needs to
option.
be that person, yes.
That's an option. We just don't want to complicate it, and we don't want to spend a bunch of time looking at the computer all day.
I got
You
you.
know what I mean? And having to go to this website and that website.
Okay,
Be nice to have something right here we can look at,
okay,
and then we can expand from there.
okay. Maybe this is for a later discussion, but it's perhaps
Yeah, I'll offer mine up to you as a template, and then you could just go from there. It's very, very simple. So I'll get that over to you.
Any questions? Looking at the slide on the funding workshops, we're talking about funding. It kind of fits right into that. And that's, the workshops have been talking about all the different types of grants and how they apply and how you could use them and so forth. So do we have, you created a location where, as we're thinking, well, if we create this spreadsheet, it's going to be there, but these workshops where we can go and take a look at them? Okay. Okay. Looking at the discovery workshop, the project that's selected for the upper Amite, I think it's talking about LA 432, which is Felixville and north as a retention area. Somebody's going to have to do some legwork. We can think, plan wonderful things and all of that, but that's an area people live at, and they call that home. So we need to start reaching out to our local police juries, East Feliciana, because that's Felixville, St. Helena, all those people, and, kind of laying it out there that this may be a possibility. It may be an opportunity. And also the state of Mississippi. I would imagine some of that water is going to back up into Mississippi, because just north of there is where the east and west fork of the Amite River join is the state line. So not far. So just thinking about that, and whomever, Dewberry is working on it, or whoever's going to be, there's going to be some legwork that needs to be done. And I would make myself available to help do that too. This is, I think, or is everybody familiar with Persequin State Park? Okay. Well, Persequin State Park is a product of the Tangipahoa River, doing something on the Tangipahoa River. Jackson Bienville, up in Jackson, that's Pearl River. Toledo Bend, that's the Sabine River. I don't know one thing bad that anybody can say about any of those sites. So the idea of doing something like this, it takes an area like that may not have opportunity. Home is home, but they may be looking for a break and other options, the opportunity, not just for flooding, but for public recreation, economic development, and so forth. It could be over the top, a big playground, and potentially, like you had mentioned, another source of drinking water, where you don't put so much impact on the Southern Hills Aquifer that Baton Rouge uses. It supplies most of the water around here in Denham Springs. So yeah, that would be a good thing. Just my suggestions. Commissioner Knight?
I believe the two reports are due at the end of the year, our master plan as well as SCR 79 to Senator Hodges' office and the Joint Transportation Committee. I think both are going to touch on that topic. But prior to those reports coming out, we probably shouldn't take too much activity, because a lot of what those reports will do is determine whether or not the physical location can actually be or work. So it's kind of a feasibility. It's really not all the way there, but reservoir yields, whether or not you can fill something up to that capacity, are all kinds of questions we want to look at before we get too out there with it. But you're absolutely right. Once the time is right, that needs to happen, and it's going to have to be a very large publicity or public interaction, because anytime you have that kind of opportunity, there's going to be negative impacts as well. It's just the nature of that size and type of project.
Thank you. Any more questions, sir? Mr. Pittman from the Water Institute, about our either our master plan or our LWI watershed coordinating activities. Thank you very much, Garvey. You're doing a good job. Okay, moving on the agenda is a report and presentation by Dewberry. I don't know if the presentation option is working. Okay. That,
I think there's one slide.
okay, I apologize for that. But we'll make out. Okay, so we have a report presentation by Dewberry on the status of our master plan. Dewberry is our contractor. They're well-known. They do a lot of great work, and they were selected to do the ARBC master plan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Clark. Good morning, Commissioners. So I'm filling in for Sam Crampton today. I'm Seth Bradley with Dewberry. We're going to start off first reviewing the ordinances and codes. I've got Chad Bacchus from Fort and Tablada here to cover that.
Good morning, Commission. Chad Bacchus with Fort and Tablada. Just going to cover 3 slides briefly, so the next 3 slides I'll cover. Just real quick, we kind of did a current conditions assessment. Dewberry had some specialists looking at the CRS rating, so I'll cover that too, and then we had some recommended standards. So the first one's just kind of the current assessments that we found. It's pretty entailing that we got 7 communities out of 23 that are still not zoned, so that's a pretty good, I think that's a pretty good number there. But all in the same token, we got 7 communities that currently don't require, I'm sorry, only 7 require field mitigation. So a little offset on that with those 2 things. There is expected to be, with the larger communities, more proactive when it comes to stormwater detention, their requirements and all that. So it's obvious when we were looking at all these, and we made a big table in the spreadsheet. We'll have that in that master plan with all the details. But one other fact that I think we point out here too is that no community in the basin mandates any type of floodplain preservation. So you may have detention, you may have field mitigation, but none of them are actually stipulating a floodplain preservation in their ordinances. So that's it on that slide. I'm gonna move to the next one. Your CRS ratings. So we covered the same 23. 11 of those 23 communities participate in the CRS program. So there's lots of work to do to advocate for these other ones to get in the program. We think it's definitely beneficial. I think, some of it's harder than others. You can definitely tell by the higher rated communities, East Baton Rouge, Ascension, Central, Denham, Walker. Those ratings of 6 and 7 are very difficult to get and very difficult to keep, but we think it's important for communities to get them. There's some low-hanging fruit that we think are opportunities for these communities. So we'll have some recommendations for these communities to participate in, things like risk communication, open space preservation, and like I said, some of these other communities already have that. Another one's higher free boards. When you look at FFRMS, they have the federal flood risk management standard. Those programs like FEMA, every agency has a little bit different advocacy on that, but FEMA, for one instance, has a 2-foot of freeboard for your normal and then 3-foot for your critical structure. So that could be something that we could just kind of demonstrate as a protocol for these communities to develop or even adopt. So once again, we have a very detailed table, also suggestions for the CRS activities that these communities can participate in. And that'll all be back in the index on the master plan. The last slide I'm covering is talking about some of the recommended standards. These are just some of the highlights for some of your code and ordinances in the basin. And I think we mentioned the workshop on Thursday. Some of that can also be covered there as well to go into some of the details. But some of the more important ones that we kind of mentioned here, open space preservation, field mitigation that I mentioned earlier, elevation minimums as well. And then some of your impact studies. A lot of the communities look at different events, and you probably should look at multiple events, and I think some of them look at 1, some of them look at 3, 25, 50, 100. That's important to look at a wide variety of those events when you're doing these impact studies. So all this is just to mention to help improve, resiliency, safety, environmental sustainability of the basin. And of course, your CRS program is going to definitely help your insurance cost. That's why it's very important to be involved and get engaged with that. So we'll mention all that in our master plan. With that, I think I'm done with my presentation, but if y'all have any questions, I can try to entertain them.
Any questions from Mr. Bacchus?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Quintmall?
So as you start to do the analysis of, the different parishes and the ordinances, are you going to have, I guess, something available to them at some point? Let's say the 7 communities that don't, right? Are they going to, are we going to have something for them to look at so that they can say, hey, if we choose to go here, this is what other parishes are doing, here's the balances that we could use and tailor to our parish, and those things, just to kind of make it easier, so
Yes, sir.
it would help those 7 communities out.
We do. So we'll have a table that actually talks about each one of the, I guess you can have 2 different things, but the CRS ratings will be one table. You got different chapters, and we'll say, okay, you're participating in this chapter or not, and we'll have all that lined out, and we'll definitely make recommendations. We can't make them do it, but like you say, just advocate it. Hey, here's some low-hanging fruit that you can actually participate in. It doesn't really cost you anything. It just takes one ordinance. I mean, some of these other ones are more difficult, right? The freeboard thing's a serious deal, but definitely we'll have a table showing what you have an opportunity to participate in and ones that you already are participating in. We'll show points. We'll have a very detailed table, but we'll also have a write-up. We already have a write-up, and I just didn't bring it with me, but basically kind of covering all those different aspects, definitely on the CRS ratings, but actually those ordinances as well. What I just spoke about for the field, your detention, different storms and that kind of thing. So we'll have very detailed suggestions. If you already don't have it, this is what you ought to probably participate in.
Okay, that'd be great.
And we just have to be careful just that we're advocating and not
Correct.
forcing it. So anyway, that's all I want to mention.
Any more questions? Commissioner Knight?
Very, very quick comment. We do need to exercise a little bit of diligence come the end of the year or beginning of the next year. FFRMS was put in under executive orders. They could very well go away. So it's just something we're going to have to follow up with.
So what is FFRMS?
So I might let you say,
It's
you
a
want to talk?
future flood risk
Yeah.
management strategy. So it's just newer, basically like ordinances from the federal government. So like Chad mentioned, one of those is a 2 foot of freeboard for.
So is that like FEMA 2.0 stuff?
Well, risk rating 2.0, I think is technically gone. It's, I forget, what are they
They
calling it now,
renamed it,
Cindy?
yeah.
Like
So it's not there anymore, but
new flood risk rating or some generic title. But yeah, FFRMS, it's federal standards. And like Chad mentioned, one of those is 3 foot of freeboard. They recommend 3 foot of freeboard for critical infrastructure. Just those types of things that communities could look at for adopting. Obviously, you adopt those stricter standards, you get more points in the CRS system.
yeah, I'm by no means am I an expert on the topic, but it is in as an executive order. I think there were 16 federal departments that started with it. Each of those federal departments were obligated to come up with their own implementation of FFRMS. Some were better and more active at it than others. So what happens after the beginning of the year is really the big question. And a lot of it is just based on where's the money coming in. If there's federal money coming in, that's how it's going to be tied to it. So if it's HUD money, HUD has their obligations. I'm sure Cindy can help out with this.
The only reason I asked you what that was is because we're speaking to a broad audience of people who may not know all the acronyms, and I try to be respectful of them, not use as many acronyms, but, if that's what you do every day, it kind of rolls with your language, but we have to be considerate of our general public, our everyday fellow individual. Commissioner Cindy.
FFRMS is the Federal Flood Risk Management System, and it was established by HUD, really, not FEMA, and it is going to require a 2 foot freeboard and limitations on being able to bring in fill. But we are recommending it for our parish because anything that's going to be backed by a federal mortgage or federal funding is going to be required to use this standard. And I think the Association of State Floodplain Managers has done a nationwide study that determined that 26% of all of our mortgages involve federal funding. And in our parish, Livingston Parish, being as rural as we are, and as, I hate to say poor, but I think that percentage is a lot higher. And if you're not meeting those standards, those people are going to be shut out from getting a mortgage. So the people that need it the most are not going to be able to take advantage of it. So we're looking at trying to adopt that standard, plus we'd get the extra CRS points. So.
I have a question.
Commissioner Quintmall.
So this kind of popped up. I don't even know if this is in or it may be. Maybe I missed it. Maybe it's in or thing. So, did you say, Chad? Did you say it was going away, or did somebody say it was going away, or is it changing, Ed?
Ed.
It's in under a federal executive order. It's been in and out.
New administration can change.
Okay, so it could. So,
Something we need to pay attention to.
okay. All right. So if it stays in, I think it would be great to have somewhat of a presentation to the commission and obviously to the public, since we're recording this. If it stays in, I don't know, but something to watch out for. So, yes, as Commissioner Cindy was saying, it's something that we should pay attention to, obviously, when it comes to mortgages and things like that. So, if it stays in, I think we should do a great presentation here. Would be great for not only the commission, but the public as well.
Yeah, we can certainly work on that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it back over to Seth.
Our counsel, Larry.
It's because an executive order, whether it's in Louisiana or a federal executive order, once the new administration comes in, those executive orders have to be reinstituted within 60 days in Louisiana. I'm not sure what the federal is, but there's a question as to whether or not those executive orders will continue. So that's the issue of what Ed's talking about.
Sounds good.
So
we may have to-
executive orders doesn't mean law. Okay.
It's law for now.
Law for now.
It's law
Yeah.
until the 60
That could be
days.
easily overturned.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because our deadline for the draft precedes inauguration, we'll most likely just move forward with the FFRMS material.
recommendation.
Chad, look, obviously flood insurance and the cost is going to be, something that everybody's interested in.
No doubt.
And the ARBC being, to address flooding, flood risk reduction projects and so forth. CSRS is an encouraging part. Looking at the graph, the table chart, obviously some of the rural parishes, they don't have a lot of participation. They're not getting any benefits. I would suspect they don't know. And I would suspect that how to participate, perhaps public outreach, awareness, and kind of like a path forward to participate. And also, too, they may already be doing things that they're not getting credit for.
That's correct.
Right.
That's right.
To account for that.
Yeah, so we'll help, we'll definitely help with that situation, President. Yeah, I think that's a good opportunity. That's why we're trying to pull all these parts and pieces together to see exactly what they're participating in, and then make those recommendations to help get them in that program, if they're not already in there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
All right, so moving on, President Clark, I think you'll like this part of the presentation. So this is we've been looking at the sinuosity of the river. For those of you that are not familiar with sinuosity, it basically measures how much a river naturally meanders. It's a pretty simple thing to measure. It's the length of the stream channel, so that would be measured along the lowest point of the stream, which would be your channel invert, divided by the straight line distance of that reach you're looking at. So basically, as the crow flies. So obviously, the more your stream meanders, the higher that sinuosity value is going to be. So we looked at a 4-mile reach here in the upper Amite, And as you can see on your printouts, back in the 1950s, I believe he pulled this from some old USGS topo maps, that 4 mile, as the crow flies, river length was 5.8 miles, sinuosity ratio of 1.6, and the slope was approximately 3 feet per mile. But as you can see over the years, moving on to into the 1980s, that river length was reduced by 1.1 miles, slope increased from roughly 3 feet per mile to 3.5 feet per mile. And so the sinuosity ratio goes down. And then moving on to 2004, that 4 miles as the crow flies is now 4.2 river miles. So the sinuosity ratio is closer to 1. It's at 1.2. And the slope is 4 feet per mile. And then if you look from 2004 on, the river has essentially reached equilibrium in this reach. Now, what's interesting is 2004, 2017, and 2024, you do still see some meandering. So the channel's not locked in. There is still some meandering, but that sinuosity ratio stays the same, slope stays the same. So, over the last 75 years, we have seen an increase in slope in this reach and a decrease in sinuosity, but it does appear to be in a stable condition currently. Does anyone have any questions on that? This is just something we wanted to point out that we found very interesting.
Yeah, this is exciting. And for those, just to break it down a little bit, rivers are naturally sinuous, kind of like a serpentine, like a snake. That's how nature made them. Nature doesn't make straight channels, even though it's the closest distance from A to B. So the more a channel is sinuous, the more sinuosity, the greater the length. The greater the length, the more the time it takes for floodwaters to reach points of impact. The greater the length of the channel, the more sinuosity, it shaves off that peak runoff curve, so to speak. And the greater the length, the more volume of water that channel can handle, and the more gentler of the slope. So there's less downstream hydrologic energy that destabilizes the banks, which causes bank erosion in places like along 4-H Club Road and further, all through there, and even further north of the areas that have lost their sinuosity. So it's just a natural physics of nature that rivers do that we need to recognize, and you can use it to your advantage or not recognize it and continue going like we're going. That's all I had to say.
Thanks, President Clark. That was, yeah.
Commissioner Kluat.
Yes, has any correlation been given to the percentage of the gravel pits, the impact of the gravel pits versus naturally in 1930, whatever, and then, what?
I'm not sure I want to speak to that.
Okay, I'll speak to it.
If John would like.
I'll speak to it. Okay.
Go ahead, John.
So, obviously the pay dirt, so to speak, is close to the channel. And you try to, by law, you're supposed to maintain X amount of distance between the channel and your operations. And that compromises itself sometimes. It's not purposefully, so to speak, but when that does, it does remove the meanders from the stream. And that section between Grainsville and, which is LA 37 Bridge, and LA 1026, which is Magnolia Beach Bridge, has lost a lot of meanders. Meander means sinuosity, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's lost about, 5 miles in distance. It's increased. So it's like a straight, think of sinuosity as a stair step.
Yeah.
Stairs going up from upstairs to downstairs. Essentially, you've removed probably 3 steps out of the staircase.
And I guess just my question is not necessarily based on normal tide or normal levels, but on flood stage, and that's where you see that number just expand out like heck, So.
When it floods, it just all comes down. It doesn't have to go this way or that way. It just straight
Yeah,
down.
just the river it basically is channelizing itself, if you want to think about it that way. I mean, you can, in this example here, you lost 1.6 river miles over a 4-mile stretch. That's pretty significant.
That's retention right there, putting the river back like it used to be.
Yeah, and you can, if you look at that historic channel from the 50s, I mean, the river's not even close to that old channel center line. It's migrated pretty significantly.
If we could just get our DPW folks, directors of DPW, to start digging their ditches. Curvy. No. Okay, that's a joke. All right.
Okay, any more questions on the sinuosity? Okay, so moving on. So I know y'all had seen the original scan we did of the weir. Fort and Tablata put together these are high resolution renderings of that detailed scan of the weir, and we discovered like 3 main areas of concern here. So if you look at image 1, this is head cutting on the back side of the weir, and that's the portion of the weir upstream of the island. So this is the portion of the weir that is not where the boat passage is. And if you look at the center image where that triangle with the 1 is, that's your perspective looking at this head cutting, right? So what we discovered from Fort and Tablata's detailed scan is that essentially on the downstream side of the weir, that what you're looking at is head cutting into the old riverbank. So that would have been the Amite River's historic bank that was shaved down when the diversion canal was created. And because of turbulence on the backside of that weir, you're getting head cutting, or what most people know as scour, and it is migrating to the weir. So that portion of the weir is, I mean, I couldn't tell you if it's going to happen in 1 year or 5 years or 10 years, but if that head cutting continues, it could undermine the weir and cause a partial collapse there, which would then send even more water down the diversion canal. And then moving on to image 2 in the bottom left, that's triangle 2. That's additional scour downstream of the boat passage. Same issue there. If that scour continues to migrate towards the weir structure, you could have, the weir could collapse, causing major issues. And then another thing to note is downstream of the weir. So I know we've talked a lot about how there's all that sediment deposition just downstream of the weir in the channel. Just downstream of the sediment deposition is a very large scour hole. And that's most likely from, you have obviously the river's wider upstream of the weir, and then it narrows. You get the sediment that falls out, and then you're getting scour on the backside of that big.
Downstream of the weir in the diversion canal?
No,
or
sorry,
in
that's
the-
so this is actually in the Amite. So this is the big scour
Okay.
hole that is just down. There's the big
Yeah.
sediment deposition where the river gets, I think, like 5 feet right there. And then just downstream of that in that bend. So if you look at the middle image, it's triangle 3. That is the perspective looking at that scour hole. So there's a massive scour hole on the other side of the where the sediment's deposited. So any questions or comments on the weir? I believe we're looking at so we are going to be looking at restoring the weir to the original elevation in combination with the strategic dredging. But now that we have dug into this scour problem, I believe we're also going to recommend or have a recommendation for basically mitigating the scour so that in the meantime the weir doesn't collapse, since the weir may be dependent on the strategic dredging, so there's no negative impacts on Livingston.
So on this weir rehabilitation project, so to speak, is there going to be a mention to doing it in concert or sequence with what Livingston Parish is proposing to do on the lower Amite, to put the lower Amite channel like it was when the weir was constructed? Because if it's not, it may cause more impacts on that lower reach of the Amite River if the channels doesn't remove all that sediment.
Right. Yeah. So I think the way we would sequence this, and I'm sure we'll dig into this on Thursday at the workshop. But we could rehabilitate the scour just so that there is no threat to the weir's integrity, and then obviously you would have to dredging first, then lift the weir to the historic height. And so we're in the process of running the weir and dredge model right now, actually. So hopefully we'll have results for that on Thursday.
And possibly put a, like a disclaimer saying that, we're not going to rehabilitate the weir until we can restore the lower reaches of Amite, something like
Exactly.
that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we've been looking at dredging that the first, I forget how many river miles it is. It might be 6 river miles just downstream of the weir. I think it's just downstream of the weir to Shin Blanc, if I'm not mistaken, is what we're looking at for the strategic dredging. Basically taking out the big sediment deposits.
The high spots
Exactly. Yeah.
to natural bottom. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. So unfortunately, since I can't pull this up on the screen, I think y'all just see a bunch of stacked images. These are just example pages from the master plan. I can get these sent out today for y'all to take a look, and then any feedback is very welcome. We have or I can show you after if you want. We've got the title page and then some of the chapter dividers, and then a example project sheet, and then also a couple of images just showing an overview of the river, highlighting gravel mines and that sort of thing. So I'm more than happy to show that to anybody after the meeting on my laptop if y'all want to take a look. I apologize that we can't have it up on the screen.
I got a question.
Quint Mall.
So, 2 things. On the sinuosity, are you going to do the entire channel for us to see how much
Yes.
we've lost of the entire Amite?
We were looking at sinuosity on the entire Amite, yes.
Because I'd like to know how many miles we've lost in the entirety of the channel.
Yes, we've got that. This was just, I guess Sam found this one of the more interesting reaches that sort of highlighted the channel migration.
So on the Amite diversion weir, and I wish Mark Harrell was here, he would, our commissioner would give us, there's obviously the concern about the dredging, but I know that PLD has some capital outlay money for the weir. We may want to redirect those funds to do some rehabilitation of this head cutting and scouring to ensure the integrity of the weir is there, at least what's there today, because if it falls in, obviously that's going to have a dramatic effect, at least until the lower Amite is dredged, and that we can feel comfortable that raising the weir will not put a adverse effect on the lower Livingston part once you start changing the percentage of flow down the diversion, then down the Amite River. But since they have those funds available now, it may be a good opportunity for to redirect those funds to this issue and this problem. So, Randy, if you want to bring that back to PLD and let's see maybe if we can get something on a short term in fixing this problem. Thanks.
That's a good point. And thanks to the work on the master plan and Fort and Tablata surveys, we would have never knew about this problem. And it would have abandoned the channel, and lower Livingston would be high and dry. And Ascension would.
Have some rapids down the diversion canal.
Yes. Yes.
So, okay, so the expected milestones for next meeting, I just realized that says September, it should say December. So we'll have the final recommendations for the ordinances, and it sounds like Commissioner Coinmont, you'd like further discussion on the FFRMS as well. The existing in 2050 baseline economic analysis, so we almost had that ready for this meeting, but those models are still running. And to backtrack a little to CRS, one thing that will be available to communities, that 2050 baseline model is a source of CRS credits, looking at future conditions. So that's something that you as a commission can provide to communities for CRS points, is that 2050 future no action baseline. On task 6, we'll have finalized results of key project assessments. The workshop Thursday will have results and the economic analyses for a lot of those projects. All that's currently in motion right now, and we're wrapping those up. Task 7, the mitigation banking feasibility will be finalized and conservation projects refined. Task 8, we'll have the governance and funding summaries refined. We'll have for task 9 initial maintenance summaries, and then task 10 will have further refined draft of the master plan document. So some of those additional images like we have included today. So that is all I have for the update today. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions
Is the,
for Lito?
your draft, is that on Garvin's SharePoint link, the one that you?
We can get it up there.
Instead
And
of
if
emailing it, just.
okay, yeah, I was going to say I can also show it to you on my laptop if you're interested and you want to see. I know the the printout didn't
No, it's all good.
include
Just
all of
asking.
those. I apologize.
Just got real excited about the CRS stuff. Along those lines, is there any way to make a kind of a show, say like you have a average home, say one that's 2,000 square foot or 2,500 square foot, what your insurance, the average flood insurance rate may be, and versus, what the different percentages, how it could change? That could be like the bait that everybody takes.
Yeah, so we could show those. So CRS is a percentage discount. The issue with insurance rates now is it's a black box and no one knows how that insurance is rated. Not even, Cindy can attest to this. You can talk to the higher ups at Region 6 and they'll tell you headquarters has not divulged that to anyone. What's that? Yes. It's, I think, was it 6 or 7 criteria they have, but no one knows how they're weighted and what goes into that calculation. So we know the criteria, but we don't know how anything is calculated, and yet I don't know if anyone's been able to make sense of it. The other issue is that there are, not to get technical, but they are running those Monte Carlo simulations where they're running like 2,000 events, and so they're not just looking at in or out of the 100-year floodplain. They're looking at more advanced probabilities, essentially.
Any more questions? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Also, I'd like to recognize Dewberry's team. Dewberry has his team with a really good team consisting of HNTB. You've already heard from Fort and Tablata, Lettieri Engineering, and also ELOS. Thank y'all. Okay, next item on our agenda is Comite River Diversion Canal Project. Mr. Bankston, can you give us a little update on that, besides waste tires and stuff?
In your packet there was a October 15th Comite Diversion Canal update with DOTD, Corps of Engineers. The information is included. They're very close to finishing the bridges on 964 and 67, and they're really getting started on LA 19. They're still dealing with the issue of Brooks Lake. There's some properties that still need to be acquired in reference to that. And maybe I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Marino to give an update as it relates to Florida Gas.
Right, and so on Brooks Lake, we're still waiting on the final design and right-of-way maps to even know what we're going to acquire on the DOTD side. That's got to come from the Corps. As far as Reach 3, the big drill, the FERC permit came through, and so they're expecting shortly to start to mobilize out there to do that, the relocation. That hopefully going to be started soon. They're already out there. I'd heard November 8th, 9th, but nobody had said anything, so good. Good.
What about the question of Brooks Lake and needing the pipeline to be moved in Brooks Lake?
It's going to depend on the design. Then we're going to have to do,
Start over?
FGT is going to have to do some kind of work to figure out what they need to do, depending on what the Corps is going to do. So that's could be a while.
Okay, so it sounds like we got some challenges with Brooks Lake, Corps of Engineers, permitting.
That's correct. So Brooks Lake was kind of an afterthought as to what you needed in reference to, and now they're making a determination, and they're trying to, I think, to work around not having to go and move the pipeline that additional area in the Brooks Lake area. So hopefully they can come up with a design that will keep us from having to not start over, but implement the movement of the pipeline in the Brooks Lake area. So hopefully that'll happen. Keep our fingers crossed.
And the general idea here was that the water would come through the diversion all the way to this part of it and then just kind of flow over the land without having to have channel built all the way out to the Mississippi. And that's what they determined wasn't going to work because there was too much scour. And so, as Larry said, they're trying to figure out what to do to see what they can avoid in the way of Florida gas and I suppose everything else.
This area is the area, if those who are familiar with it, is where the state police training facility is and their shooting range, kind of to the south of that. So there are some areas, and the big concern is that there is further to the south there is a Superfund site that is under continuous monitoring, so you cannot have anything that's going to go on that property at all. So that's the challenge that the Corps is looking at this particular time.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Thank you for that update. All right, going back to our agenda, number 10, under new business. Bullet number 1 is our draft resolution 1183, state appropriations for ARBC operating fund. Tony, did you want to explain? Larry, please.
Okay. At the direction of the last meeting, there was a request that we draft a request to the legislature for operating funds of $5 million over a period of time. The draft resolution is seeking support from the delegation that is in the Amite River Basin and asking for their support going forward. And in the resolution, we attempted to explain the fact that at this particular time, we do not have any source of continuing funding for the commission, and this was to set us in a situation where we would have funding for a short period of time until we could demonstrate, and the commission could demonstrate to the public that there would be a possibility of seeking some type of either millage or some type of additional funding, but that would only come into effect once we have able to demonstrate we were doing the jobs that the public is seeking us to do. So this is that resolution directed to the members of our delegation asking for that assistance. In the past, and this goes back many years, there was a small appropriation that the legislature made and continued to make of about $250,000 to $300,000 over a period of time. But once the millage was passed for the Comite Diversion Canal, those funds by the legislature came to a stop. So this is at the direction of the request from the board, kind of an outline of a resolution to our delegation.
Okay, so do we need to take an action
Yes, sir.
on this? All right, so does everyone understand what this is asking for? Obviously, we thought we would submit a capital outlay request, but capital outlay cannot be used for operating expenses. So looking to be included in part of some legislative budget. And because obviously we don't have any money. We're being very creative. Tony is juggling money from here to there to get the best expense. And we're seeking out every grant opportunity we can. But I don't know if this is sustainable if we don't have a good operating budget. So I'd like to keep this going on because it's a very unique opportunity that we have with the 7 parishes sitting together. Commissioner O'Neill.
How do the other regions handle this?
Other regions like what regions? Okay, the watershed initiative regions. They're not operating at the capacity that we are. They're not set up like we are. In fact, we're kind of like a model for the rest of the state. They want to be like we are. We're doing watershed initiative work plus times 5.
Yes.
Yeah, they can only aspire to try to be like the vision that the leaders of this area, the Capital Region, Livingston, Ascension Parish, and East Baton Rouge saw a long time ago. And but yeah, we're Region 9, but that's just one facet of the ARBC.
How are they getting these?
They apply for project funding just like we do. The steering committee recommends projects. We had round 1 funding. We had round 2 funding. We also reached out and become a MID. That's, I'm not going to use the acronym, most impacted and distressed area, where we got an additional $100 million on top of whatever every other region got. Now that's kind of like monopoly money. I mean, you don't, it's not in the account. You have to check all the boxes and meet all the requirements, and your projects do. Whereas some projects may not be acceptable just because they're not low to moderate income, even though there's a need in that area. You got to check all the boxes, and then, you know, that money's reimbursable, but no match is required.
Where do they get their operating costs?
So LWI had provided $800,000 that is allowed, and some of the LWI districts are being run by Capital Region Planning, Regional Planning Commission, whatever. But the legislature has looked for the past 2 years, 2 sessions, as the possibility of creating, in effect, a Amite River Basin Commission type commission in each of the other regions. That has not passed, but it has been looked at and is going to be looked at this upcoming session. So hopefully, if they do something like that, they will, if you're going to create a new entity, which they don't like to create new boards, but this is one of the things they're looking at, is to provide some type of funding source, like a levy board, who has automatic millages that do not require a vote of the people, but that's because of their institutional aspect to it. So the LWI money that was initially given is from the HUD money from the state Office of Community Development, and that's been a limited amount of money. We have some millage authority, but it is really it's difficult to go back to the people until you demonstrate you've done the work in the vineyards.
So, yeah, Watershed Initiative provided each region $800,000, up to $800,000, and it's allowable for certain uses. And what we're doing with that is we're paying the Water Institute, unlike, say, Acadiana Watershed District or South Central Planning or all these different entities that are pretty much living off and coordinating the region on that behalf. But that 800,000 is not 800 in the bank. You have to, everything you do has to be documented and justified in order to be reimbursed for the amount. And that's where the magic is. That's where the magic. Everybody can just get awarded X amount of dollars, but you have to administer it from concept to completion. And that in between there is very challenging. And Garvin is doing a good job at doing that for us. Any more questions? Commissioner Quinton?
Do we need to take action on a resolution?
Yes.
So I'll make a motion, or we do the resolution.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Quinton.
second it.
I got a second by Commissioner Bailey. Do I have any opposition on this to seek funds? Okay, motion passes. Great, great discussion. Okay, moving on our agenda, looking at the second bullet under number 10, new business. It's going to be Louisiana Water Institute Contract Amendment Number 1. Mr. Bankston, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
If you recall, when we initially sought proposals, there was a maximum limitation of $100,000, not knowing whether or not we can proceed with seeking a actual executive director or in that particular limitation in the contract. The way the bidding process went, we were able to and still be in compliance and be reimbursable as long as the maximum amount of the contract not to exceed $250,000. So this particular, we're not at the $100,000 level yet, but we will probably be exceeding that to the Water Institute next month, or even maybe in next month or in January. So this amendment, at the suggestion of President Clark, is we put it to the maximum not to exceed. Probably not going to use all that amount of money, but that amendment would simply say, and changes only one thing, from $100,000 not to exceed to the $250,000 not to exceed.
Need an action on that.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept that amending the contract for the Water Institute? I've got a motion by Commissioner Bailey, second by Commissioner Weber.
Got a question?
Question, Commissioner Quintmall.
So, I mean, naturally, we have this in the budget. Tony? Yeah? Okay, thank you. That's all I need to know.
So let me explain a little bit. Okay, so we can cover it in our general fund, but we get reimbursed. We get reimbursed for our master plan activities from the CPRA. If approvable, they reimburse us for those funds. We just have to float it for a while. And then for the watershed initiative, regional watershed coordinator activities, we get reimbursed under that $800,000. So, but we have to float these costs until we get reimbursed, and so far we've been successful. Any more questions? Any public comments on this? Any opposition? All right, motion passes. Okay, going back to our agenda, number 10, we've got our third item under number 10, new business. That's going to be a discuss this cooperative endeavor agreement for ARBC and EBR, September 2018, North Landfill Borrow and Field Material contract. Mr. Bankston, can you elaborate on that for us?
So some some time ago, 2018, we entered into a cooperative endeavor agreement with the East Baton Rouge Parish for borrow and fill material, which is used for the cover at the landfill, which is almost immediately adjacent to the Comey Diversion Canal site. We receive payments for those. There is a process in which an engineer goes out and surveys the property and makes determination as to the amount of fill that's being moved and taken and used as borrow cover. I think right now, the total amount that we have received over the period of time is about $800,000. And since the inception of this, it's actually increased a good bit. The amount that is presently owed is probably close to $300,000, a little over $300,000 that the city parish will pay to ARBC. That's being taken into consideration for the master plan, as that will not continue once East Baton Rouge Parish takes possession of the Comey Diversion Canal. Those funds will, that will be their property, and then we will not continue to receive that. East Baton Rouge Parish and the landfill operator have reached out. They've kind of reached a limit in the area that they're doing now, and they're now seeking authority to move to what they call a different cell. So that process is ongoing, and we will be meeting with them to ensure that it doesn't cause any issues. There is another pipeline that goes through there, the Genesis pipeline, and we have to make sure that it doesn't cause any scour for the location and the runoff of any water. So that's just kind of, that's another source of income that we have now, but that's not something that will last.
I just want to say that, we've been lucky. Lucky because without this funding stream that was really not planned for and intended, we've been able to sustain ourselves and survive and continue to operate and be creative and utilize our expertise and our unified front with all the parishes to try to leverage projects and get things going for the people. So hopefully we can continue, but it's not going to be forever. So we're going to have to think of something that's a little bit more, a budget that's a little bit more sustainable if we want to make this work. All right. Any comments on the contract? Okay. At the beginning of the meeting, I'd requested public comments. Do we have any public comments? We'd love to hear your comments. Anything about the Amite River? Ms. O'Neill.
Is there any way that we could start a process whereby we could determine what gravel pits are active, which ones are inactive? Do they have names? Do they have numbers? Are they in a floodway or adjacent to a floodway? Does anybody else feel like this is something we need to be tracking a little closer?
I would think perhaps yes, or kind of like from a regulatory
You
standpoint.
want me to comment? I think.
Commissioner Quintmore?
So in our project committee, we discussed Garvin possibly compiling a list for us on the gravel pits to the north, since that's where we plan a project and different projects, so that we could understand what the status was of these projects, keep an eye on them, see when they're going to, become available for probably possible purchase or detention. So yes, this is one of the tasks that we want to task Garvin with, compiling a short list of gravel pits and their uses, exactly what you're requesting for future detention, for future projects, in order to, if we're going to lose miles and miles of sinuosity and channel for capacity, which is rushing water to the southern parishes, right? If we're going to do that, then you have to offset that eventually with detention up north. And the gravel pits offer that opportunity. We do need to start the process of potential project sites, 100%. And so we talked about tasking Garvin with compiling that list and tapping into the assessor sites in the different parishes and starting that information and compiling that list of potential project sites, if that answers your question.
Are they still requesting permits for new gravel pits? And once somebody does get a permit, who do they get the permit from? And once they get it, is it in perpetuity, or is there any reporting on it while it's in process, or?
Yeah, I don't know about, for this commission to oversee gravel pits. I don't think that is within our jurisdiction, but projects, I think is. And so I don't know. That's from a legal standpoint. I don't see us overseeing that. And the issuance of that, whether that be DEQ or EPA, maybe Mr. Knight could do you have any idea who regulates gravel pits up north, state agency-wise?
DNR.
DNR.
Officer Conservation and DEQ.
Yeah, all bore pits are, their mining operations is what they are.
Yes. Office of Conservation under DNR. DEQ, regulatory, in other words, water, LPDES, discharge, and at Section 404, wetland permitting under the U.S. Army Corps.
I don't think we need oversight on it, but I do feel like we need to be made aware of what's going on in the floodplain.
No, I agree with that.
Okay. I got Dewberry. Can you shed a little light on this? I know y'all working heavily in that area.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, Kareem Belajali with ELOS. So we are compiling a list of what we think are abandoned gravel pits. Both in the Amite and the Comite. We have that list. The website we're using is a USGS that also tracks abandoned and active gravel pits. So there is a site that they're all named. You can go in, find out who the owner was, and details on the operations. You can also look at mining safety. So there's another data set you can look at. Because they're at mines, they do have to follow safety regulations. So we've been able to keep track of sites that are active. So we will have that list. We are going through it, trying to figure out which ones are still sort of in recovery, which ones are mostly sandy. So we're using that as a springboard to then propose in the master plan ideas on how to conserve or reclaim or restore some of those sites. So we can provide that at the workshop on Thursday as well.
Okay. So when you're compiling this work, you're making that available for the master plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Like an appendix or something?
It'll be in the body and appendix, and then we can also provide additional information to the board directly.
Okay.
If need be.
Well, there you go. That's great. Any more public comments? Okay, hearing no public comments, could I get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Quintmall and seconded by Parker. I'd like to thank everyone. Thank you all for your time coming out here today. It's for a wonderful cause. And thank the visiting public. Have a good day.